So now for question number 2, again, we're given some information, and we got to prove side angle side. So we're told that line segment JN is congruent to MN. So JN is congruent to MN. All right. And then we're told that NK is congruent to NL. So this is congruent to this. And then we're asked to prove that JNK, so I'm going to go JNK, that's like a triangle there, is congruent to MNL. So if you notice this little triangle right here, that doesn't mean anything. Those are the triangles that we got to prove. So this has 1 hash mark, which is good. And this has 1 hash mark, so that's a side. Then I'm also given, this is 2 hash marks, and this is 2 hash marks, the other side. So there's an angle that I have to prove, and it has to be trapped between the 2 sides. In other words, I got to try to prove that this angle is congruent to this angle. Then I have side, angle, side, side, angle, side. So to write the proof, I'm going to say what's given first. By the way, what do I have to prove? I have to prove that triangle JNK is congruent to triangle MNL, right? And I'm going to have to use side angle side theorem or postulate, depending on your textbook author, to prove it. Now, I already know how to prove these angles. These angles are vertical angles. But now I have to write it formally. Vertical angles are always congruent. Whenever you have 2 lines across, they're a vertical angle. So let's just write that down, kind of a quick refresher. Those lines are always congruent because they are vertical angles are congruent. So vertical angles are always congruent. Always. Okay? And that's how I prove this theorem. So I'm going to list what's given to me. So I'm given that JN is congruent to MN and NK is congruent to NL. That's given to me. And I'm just going to write over here 2 sides. So now I need to prove the angle in between them. So the next thing that I need to do is I'm going to say the angle JNK is congruent to angle MNL, vertical angles. And just put R congruent symbol. That's it. That's all we had to do. Now where students get stuck is, how do I prove that those 2 angles are congruent? So one thing that I've noticed about geometry class, you really got to memorize these theorems, okay? I knew exactly how to prove that. Well, I'm a math teacher. I should know how to prove it. But I knew that I could prove congruence because those were vertical angles. If you don't know vertical angles are congruent, you would stare at that page for a long time. Okay? So just to recap, what I've done is I've shown that this side and this side are congruent. Then this angle and this angle is congruent because they're vertical angles, and this angle, or this side and this side is congruent. So I was given the 2 sides, and then one additional step was figuring out how to prove that these 2 angles were congruent. When I did that, I could prove that triangle NK or JNK is congruent to triangle MNL through the side angle side theorem of congruence. Okay?